Are these two seemingly radically different periods interconnected? The Shah and Ayatollah's Ruptures and Continuities. Please join me in welcoming Professor Milani.
Thank you very much, Professor Hagen and Amber at the Center for Middle East, who has done all the labor of trying to arrange for these things. Take a lot of behind-the-scenes labor. So I thank her, and I thank Professor Hagen, and I thank all of you for coming. We had a guest at Stanford last week, and he began by recounting an anecdote. It was an interesting anecdote. He talked about the day when Michael Jackson scored 69 points in one basketball game, and that was the greatest number of points scored. And the television program was talking to one of the other players, and they asked him, well, how do you feel about this? He said, well, I am the person who played on the game that Michael Jackson and I together scored 71 points. He scored 2, Michael Jackson 69. Now, in retrospect, in future, I can tell my grandchildren that I and Michael Clooney were talking in the same room, in the same building, at the same time, one floor different. I'm going to talk about, essentially, why we need a biography of the Shah, and specifically, what are the ruptures and continuities between him and the regime that succeeded him. I'll talk about why we need a biography much more briefly. And I don't have my watch, unfortunately, so if somebody can tell me when we are about to run out of time, I would appreciate it. I don't, I was looking, so you'll tell me. Oh, thank you very much. That's very generous of you. A little fancier watch than I'm used to. I think it is becoming increasingly clear that the fall of the Shah was a pivotal moment in the Middle East. Many events that have since happened are now traced back to this fall. And I think the tumults and the instabilities in Iranian politics over the last 30 years are also still, in my view, the continuation of the same dynamics that overthrew the Shah. I'll talk about that in a little more detail in the latter part of my talk. And nearly everything that has been written about the Shah himself, has been either hagiography or demonology. They have either made of him a hero that made no errors, or they have made of him a demon that did no right. They either make him a lackey of US, the Shah who was installed in power by the CIA in '53, or they make of him this almost meta-historical figure that came and took a backward country and developed it. And the people were simply too stupid to recognize what a blessing he was, and they lost the opportunity. More or less, the Shah's last book, My Answer to History, is in the latter category. That is the basic message of the book, that I did all of this good for the country, and the people were not strong, appreciative, they were not smart enough to recognize it. And he considers the only mistake he ever made was not use of force enough, and by keeping Zahedi in his appointment as an ambassador too long. These are the two mistakes he was willing to make with 9 years, 9 months in exile. So neither of these two extremes, I think, do justice to the complexities of this character, who was indeed a complex character in my view. And the reality of his personality and the reality of what he has done, in my view, often differs very much with either of these two extreme views. He was, in essence, very much like Richard II. That's why the book starts every chapter with a quotation from Shakespeare's Richard II. Richard II was a king that was very ambitious, very aggressive, very authoritative, and authoritarian when he felt in power. And the minute he was challenged, he broke down. And much sooner than anybody anticipated, was willing to turn over the crown to Bolingbroke. Bolingbroke had come to take a piece of land. He got the crown instead. And I think that's very much what happened in Iran. The Shah gave up far too early. And again, many of his supporters would like to say that this was because he had cancer, he was taking medication, and these medications were causing him indecision. The medications were of a sort that cause indecision. They are of a sort that cause paranoia. They are of a sort that cause depression. And the Shah had a tendency to be paranoid, to be depressed, to be insomniac, to be paranoid. And we see all of these very much in play in 1952, for example, in his battle with Mossadegh. More than once the Shah almost left the country. In fact, between 1941 to 1953, when he did leave the country, and he left the country again prematurely, long before any of his supporters anticipated, and almost doomed the effort to overthrow Mossadegh. Between that period, this 12-year period, I have found at least 5 different instances where the Shah was on the verge of leaving the country. He was very much paradoxically a reluctant monarch. And I say paradoxically because he was a reluctant monarch. He was almost ready to leave before coming to the throne, and yet he stayed for 37 years. And he fought some very serious foes, people who really wanted to end his power. So he is a very interesting, I think, complicated character. His fall is very much a pivotal moment. One review of this book in the Wall Street Journal begins by claiming that the fall of the Shah is comparable only in terms of its magnitude to the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. Now, I think that's a little exaggerated, but that's the ballpark of the significance when people are talking about it. That's how significant they think 1979 is. And in some ways, writing an impartial biography of him is possible virtually only now, because many of the most important documents we need to understand what happened have been declassified only in the last few months. Some of the documents, very critical documents, on the nature of Iran's nuclear program, for example, became declassified as the book was already in print. I had to delay the printing of the book by 4 months. It was about 1,000 pages of new documents that have been declassified from the U.S. Department of State, Department of Treasury, Defense Department, nuclear companies, nuclear agencies, and when you read them, they radically revamp the way we understand the Shah's nuclear program and the way we understand the U.S.'s relationship with the Shah on the nuclear program. They completely contradict everything that the Iranian regime, for example, has been saying about the U.S. The regime has been claiming for the last 30 years, and virtually has gone unchallenged, that the United States was willing to give the Shah anything the Shah wanted. In fact, encouraged the Shah to have the program, encouraged the Shah to expand the program. But now that we have an Islamic regime in Iran that is not following the U.S.'s lead, the U.S. is making unnecessary encumbrances. In reality, almost everything that the United States has raised with the Islamic Republic, it raised with the Shah. And for 4 years, they were fighting behind the scenes. And some very serious disagreements existed between Iran and the U.S. on the nature of the nuclear program, on the number of reactors Iran could have. The United States government essentially forbade U.S. companies from bidding in Iran for almost 4 years, for 3.5 years. And to his credit, the Shah was unwilling to give uncommon guarantees that the United States saw. The Shah repeatedly said,